Hi everyone, this is Frank DeRose, bass instructor at the School of the Blues. Today's video is the next installment of How to Survive a Blues Jam. This is called Where Do We Start Part 2. These are 5 additional classic ways to start a blues song. I'd done a previous video with 3 classic ways to start a blues song. Those were the most common ways to start a blues song at a blues jam. 4 of today's 5 examples come from the live recordings of the band I play with, Gary Smith and the House Rockers, and 1 example comes from my book, The Blues Bass Play-Along Tracks. The first example comes from that book, and it's called Start on the 2. In a previous video, I introduced you to the modified 12-bar chord progression where we get the beginning of the jazz influence, where measures 9 and 10 are played with the 2 chord on 9 and then the 5 chord on 10, as opposed to the Chicago blues style where we play the 5 chord in measure 9 and then the 4 chord in measure 10. So starting on the 2, we start in measure number 9 with the 2 chord, and we'll hear that example shortly. The next is called Vamp on the 1. That means the band will play the primary groove that the song revolves around on the 1 chord. Sometimes that's a short vamp, sometimes it's a really long vamp, and I'm going to play you 2 examples of that vamp. The next way to start the song is called Meet Me on the 4, where a player, guitar, harmonica, piano, saxophone, even the drums will play alone for the first 4 bars, and the band will come in on measure number 5, which is where the 4 chord is. The next example, we start with the breaks or punches on the 1 chord. And lastly, example number 5 is one of the players will play around the progression by themselves. That can be a guitar. The example we're going to hear is piano. It can be the harmonica. So these are really must know. We're not going to learn any notes today. We're learning the concept. We want to get the concept firmly planted in our musical data bank. So when we're at a blues jam and somebody says, hey, meet me on the 4, we know what to do. We'll have heard it before. So let me start with the first example. Example number 1, start on the 2. Yeah, start from the 2. Measure number 9. You heard the bass walk up from the 2 to the 5, back down to the 1, 2 measures of the 1, and then the form started. Now, time for the next example, Vamp on the 1. So for the first example of Vamp on the 1, you'll hear the piano start the groove, vamping on the 1, and the band kicks in with the primary groove, and the headline starts. So Vamp on the 1. There's the groove. The band is in, the 12 bar has started. That's a short little vamp on the 1. Now, I'll play one from the band I played in 10 years ago. It'll be my original composition. It's a much longer vamp. So let me get it set up. Now this song is my original called "The Night is Young." You'll recognize it because it is the theme music for my opening and closing credits. 10 years ago, I was in a band called Tip of the Top. This track features Aki Kumar, vocals and harmonica, John Lawton on guitar, Carlos Velasco on drums, the piano player, Sid Morris. That's the piano player you just heard on the previous example. He'll be the piano player you'll hear through all these examples. And Johnny Katsobrand is in the background guitar. So here we go. A much longer vamp on the one.
I said, hey, that girl, won't you dance with me?
Ah, yeah. Vamping on the one.
I said, hey, that girl, won't you dance with me?
And then the band comes in like a thunderclap. And then when Aki starts singing, the energy jumps even higher. So vamp on the one can be a really effective way to start a song, especially if you're in a band, a rehearsed band, and you're working on your material. These other options of how to start a song are very effective in energizing the crowd. So let me get set up and I'll be right back with the example of Meet Me on the 4. Now for the example of Meet Me on the 4, taken from the live recordings of Gary Smith and the House Rockers, feature the great Gary Smith and harmonica starting the song off, 4 measures of Him Alone, and then the band falls into place at measure number 5 on the 4 chord. So let's hear it, Gary. There we are. There's the 4 chord. Yeah, very common intro, especially harmonica. They love to do that. It really excites the audience when the band is all in on measure number 5. So now we're going to hear another way to start a song with the breaks or punches in those first 4 measures. So let me get that one queued up. The next example is where the band is going to play the punches behind one of the instruments who's soloing or playing riffs or melodies through the first 4 measures. So it's also featuring Gary Smith and House Rockers Live with Gary Smith and harmonica. So let's start with all those punches. Here we go. On the 4 chord. Back to the 1, 5, 4, turn around, starts all over again. So there you have it. The 4th great way to start a song with breaks of punches on the 1. So let me get set up for the final example. So the final example for today is when somebody calls out, hey, I'm going to go around once by myself. This is an example of what that means. We're going to hear Sid Morris play the piano, but it also could be the harmonica. Pee Wee Crayton does it on some of his guitar instrumentals. He plays all the way through by himself, 12 bars, and then the band comes in. the beginning of the second time through the progression. So let's hear All By Myself. Here we go. There we go, right from the one. Sid's whipping the boogie on that piano. Oh, a 2-5, yeah. Here comes the band now. Yeah, so that's the category of someone is going to go around by themselves one time. So I'll be right back with some final thoughts. So that's a wrap on How to Survive a Blues Jam. Where do we start? Part 2, where we learned and heard 5 additional classic ways to start a blues song. We heard starting on the 2. We then heard the vamp on the 1. We heard an example of a short vamp, and then we heard a much longer vamp. Then we heard an example of meet me on the 4, and then we heard an example of starting with the breaks or punches, and lastly, we heard an example of someone who will play all around the 12-bar by themselves before the band comes in. So I hope you enjoyed this video. When you combine this video with the other ones about how to survive a blues jam, you really start to get a comprehensive view and knowledge set of what you need to know beyond the notes and bass patterns that you play. So until I see you again, keep on thumping that bass. Bye for now.